Greetings! Mantare79 here, and welcome back to another deck profile video for the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game. And now in today's video, the deck profile I'm going to be making one for is the standard formats. Kagero's Dual Axe Archdragon with Bi-Attack Dragon. Alrighty, let's begin. First up, the starting unit. And now, first up, the Grade 0 lineup. For the Grade 0s in this deck, we are playing 1. Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe. The Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe, starting unit. Skill, Auto. When rolled upon, draw a card. Then, if your opponent's Vanguard is Grade 1 or greater, put a Quick Shield ticket into your hand. So for Lizard Soldier Conroe, he's the starting unit of this deck. Like any other starting unit in the V standard format, it features the same skill and activation. When written on top of, you get to draw a card. Then if you're the second to rise to Grade 1, you can add a Quick Shield to your hand, which can serve as a potential 5,000 point shield. And with that, we've just about covered the deck's Grade 0 lineup. Next, let's get on with the deck's Grade 1 lineup. And now, for the Grade 1 lineup. For the Grade 1s in this deck, we are playing 4. Grade 1, Lava Flow Dragon. 4. Grade 1, Flame of Hope, Eremo. 3. Grade 1, Dragon Knight, Kishot. And 2. Grade 1, Lizard Soldier, Raupia. The Grade 1, Lava Flow Dragon. Skills, first skill, continuous as a Vanguard or Rearguard. During your turn, if you have more Rearguards than your opponent, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. Second skill, Auto as a Vanguard or Rearguard. When placed from hand, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck. Reveal up to 1 Grade 3 from among them, put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you put a card into your hand, discard a card from your hand. So for Lava Flow Dragon, it's a pretty good Grade 1 to play in your Kagero decks if its skill is the first skill. As long as the conditions of the first skill are met, your Lava Flow then can serve as a potential 13,000 point attacker for your front row, or a 13,000 point booster for your back row. And the second skill, when written or called, you can then search the top 5 cards of your deck to search for a Grade 3 to either ride with or to secure for your later game strategy. The Grade 1, Flame of Hope, Eremo. Skills, first skill, continuous as a Rearguard. During the battle it boosted, this unit gets plus 3,000 power. Second skill, Auto as a Rearguard. When your opponent's Rearguard is retired during your turn, cost, retire this unit. If the cost is paid, draw a card and countercharge 1. So for Eremo, it's one of the main Grade 1s that you play in any Kagero deck. With skill, the first skill. When boosting, your Eremo then can serve as a potential 11,000 point booster for your back row. Any second skill, whenever you retire an opponent's Rearguard and pay the cost, not only do you get to draw more cards to stock out your hand, but you can also refund your counterblast for later skills. The Grade 1, Dragon Knight, Kishot. Skills, first skill, Auto as a Rearguard. When placed, cost, counterblast 1 and soul blast 1. If the cost is paid, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's back row Rearguards and retire it. And the second skill, Auto, when rolled upon, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck. Reveal up to 1 Grade 3 or greater card from among them, put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So for Kishot, it's another great Grade 1 to play in your Kagero decks if its skill is the first skill. When called and paying the cost, not only do you get to draw more cards, but you can also retire one of your opponent's back row Rearguards. And the second skill, when you ride on top of your Vanguard Dragon Knight Kishot, you have the chance to check the top 5 cards of your deck for a Grade 3 to either to ride with or to secure for your later game strategy. The Grade 1, Lizard Soldier, Raupia. Skill, Auto as a Vanguard or Rearguard. When your opponent's Rearguard is retired during your turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power until end of turn. So for Lizard Soldier Raupia, another good card to play in your Kagero decks with skill. Whenever you retire an opponent's Rearguard, you can give power to your Raupia, and the best part about this skill, it's stackable. For the chance you manage to continuously retire rear guards from your opponent's field, you can continue stacking power to your Raupia, making him a potential front row attacker or back row booster to make it easier to either to pressure or finish off your opponent with. And of that, we just about covered the deck's Grade 1 lineup. Next, let's get on to the deck's Grade 2 lineup. And now for the Grade 2 lineup. For the Grade 2s in this deck, we are playing 3 Grade 2 by Attack Dragon, 3 Grade 2 Turret Cannon Dragon, 3 Grade 2 Bellicosity Dragon, and 2 Grade 2 Dragon Dancer Frema. The Grade 2 by Attack Dragon. Skills: first skill, auto as a Vanguard or Rear Guard. Once per turn, when this unit attacks a Vanguard while boosted, cost Soul Blast 1. If the cost been paid, choose a column and retire all of your opponent's rear guards in that column. Second skill, auto, from the hand. At the beginning of your ride phase, if your Vanguard is Grade 1 or less, cost discard this card. If the cost been paid, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to one Grade 2 or less card from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So for by Attack Dragon, a pretty good Grade 2 to play in your Kagero decks with skills. The first skill, when attacking while boosted, by paying the cost, you have the chance to wipe out one column of your opponent's rear guards. Any second skill, at the beginning of your ride phase while at Grade 1 or less, by revealing this card, by discarding this card from your hand, you can then search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Grade 2 or less card to help in your later game strategy. The Grade 2 Turret Cannon Dragon. Skill, action as a Vanguard or Rear Guard. Once per turn. Cost, counterblast 1 and put a normal unit from your drop zone into the bottom of your deck. If the cost is paid, choose one of your opponent's Grade 2 or less rear guards, retire it, and if your hand has 4 or less cards, draw a card. So for Turret Cannon Dragon, another good Grade 2 to play in your Kagero decks with its skill. By paying the cost, you have the chance to retire one of your opponent's rear guards, and as long as the secondary condition of this skill is met, you can also draw more cards to restock your hand with. The Grade 2 Bellicosity Dragon. Skill, auto as a Vanguard or Rear Guard. When your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power until end of turn. So for Bellicosity Dragon, another good Grade 2 to play in your Kagero decks with its skill. Whenever you would retire an opponent's rear guard, your Bellicosity gets plus 5,000 power. And the best part about this skill, it's stackable. For the chance you manage to retire multiple rear guards in your opponent's field, you can continue to stack more power into Bellicosity Dragon, making it a very powerful front row attacker to either to pressure or finish off opponents with. The Grade 2 Dragon Dancer Frema. Skills, first skill, continuous as a rear guard. If your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, this unit gets boost. And the second skill, auto as a rear guard. When placed during your turn, if you have 2 or more Grade 3 greater units, cost Soul Blast 1. If the cost is paid, retire all of your opponent's rear guards from the same columns as unit, and if 1 or less rear guards are retired, draw a card. So for Frema, another good Grade 2 to play in your Kagero decks with its skills. The first skill, as long as the conditions of the first skill is met, you can then turn your Frema into a potential 10,000 point booster for your back row. Any second skill, when called, and by meeting the conditions of its skill and paying the cost, you have the chance to not only retire your opponent's rear guards, but to also draw more cards to restock your hand with. And of that, we just about covered the deck's Grade 2 lineup. Next, let's get on with the deck's Grade 3 lineup. And now for the Grade 3 lineup. For the Grade 3s in this deck, we are playing 4 Grade 3 Dual Axe Archdragon, 3 Grade 3 Blazing Flare Dragon, and 2 Grade 3 Vortex Dragon. The Grade 3 Dual Axe Archdragon. Skill, action as a Vanguard. Cost, counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand. If the cost is paid, retire all of the rear guards in your opponent's back row, and until end of turn, when your opponent would call a card from hand or to Guardian Circle, he or she must call 2 or more at the same time. So for Dual Axe Archdragon, it's one of the main grade 3s to play in this deck. Its skill, by paying the cost, not only do you get to retire your opponent's back row of all rear guards, but also, for the rest of that turn, whenever you would make an attack from either your Vanguard or rear guard, if your opponent wishes to guard those attacks with their cards from their hand, they have the guard of 2 more cards, thereby either restricting their defensive options or to make it more easy for your upcoming attacks to hit your opponent. The Grade 3 Blazing Flare Dragon. Skills, first skill, action as a Vanguard or rear guard, once per turn. Cost, Soul Blast 1 or more cards. If the cost is paid, for each Soul Blast paid for this cost, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. If this is on the Vanguard circle, if you paid Soul Blast 5 or more for this cost, your opponent removes all markers from their circles and protect from their hand. Second skill, auto as a Vanguard or rear guard. When this unit attacks, Soul Charge 1. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and if they have no rear guards, this unit gets plus 10,000 power until end of battle. So for Blazing Flare Dragon, another one of the main grade 3s to play in this deck. Its skills, the first skill, as a Vanguard or rear guard, when you pay a cost of Soul Blast, for every card you Soul Blasted with this skill, you can retire your opponent's rear guards, and as long as the conditions of the skill are met and you pay the cost that's necessary for the additional effects, you can then not only retire your opponent's rear guards, but you can also remove all imaginary gift markers from their field or hand, thus making it easier for you to either to weaken their upcoming offense or to make their defenses weaker to make it easier for your upcoming attacks to hit. And the second skill, whenever your Blazing Flare Dragon attacks, not only do you get to build up your soul for later Soul Blast, but as long as the conditions of the second skill are met, you can also turn your Blazing Flare Dragon into a potential 23,000 point attacker for your front row. The Grade 3 Vortex Dragon. Skills, first skill, action as a Vanguard once per turn. Cost, Counterblast 2. If the cost is paid, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. And if you have 5 cards in your damage zone, discard all cards from your hand and retire all of your opponent's rear guards. Second skill, auto as a Vanguard or rear guard. When your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power until end of turn. So for Vortex Dragon, another one of the main grade 3s to play in this deck. Its skills, the first skill, as a Vanguard, by paying the cost, you can not only retire one of your opponent's rear guards, but as long as the conditions of the first skill are met, and by paying an additional cost, you can instead retire all of your opponent's rear guards. Any second skill, whenever a rear guard on your opponent's field is retired, you can then give plus 5,000 power to Vortex Dragon, and the best part about this second skill, it's stackable. For in the event you manage to continuously retire rear guards from your opponent's field during that turn, you can then continue stacking power to Vortex Dragon, making him a very powerful front row attacker to help you to either pressure or finish off your opponent with. And of that, we just about covered the deck's grade 3 lineup. Next, let's get on to the deck's trigger lineup. And now, for the trigger lineup. For the triggers of this deck, we are playing 4. Grade 0, Angry Horn Dragon, critical trigger. 2. Grade 0, Embodiment of Spear, Tar, critical trigger. 2. Grade 0, Dragon Knight Janat, critical trigger. 2. Grade 0, Wyvern Guard Bari, draw trigger. 2. Grade 0, Toxify Light Dragon, draw trigger. And 4. Grade 3, Dragon Dancer Nastasha, heal trigger. The Grade 0, Dragon Knight Janat, critical trigger, Sentinel. Skill, Continuous Sentinel. You may only have up to 4 cards of Continuous Sentinel in the deck. So for Dragon Knight Janat, he's one of the Sentinels for the Kagero clan's V standard format. Like any other Sentinel, he's a powerful defensive card. For Janat's case, he alone can serve as a potential 30,000 point shield on his own. The Grade 0, Wyvern Guard Bari, draw trigger, Sentinel, perfect guard. Skills, first skill, Continuous Sentinel. You may only have up to 4 cards of Continuous Sentinel in a deck. Second skill, auto. As a guardian, when placed, cost, discard a card from your hand. If the cost is paid, one of your units cannot be hit until end of battle. So for Bari, he's a perfect guard for the Kagero clan's V standard format. Like any other perfect guard in the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game, it features the same skill and activation. When used to guard with and discarding one card from your hand, you can block one enemy attack. The Grade 3 Dragon Dancer Nastasia Heal Trigger, Heal Guardian. Skills, first skill, auto. When this unit is put on the Guardian Circle from hand, if you did not ride a Grade 3 or greater unit during this fight, perform one of the following. First effect, choose one of your vanguards and it gets plus 10,000 power until end of turn. Second effect, choose one of your opponents and it gets -2 critical until end of battle. Second skill, auto. When this unit is placed on the rear guard from hand, if your damage zone has no cards, put the top card of your deck into the damage zone. So for Nastasia, it's one of the heal guardians for the Kagero clan. And for skills, the first skill, when you would guard with Nastasia before riding to Grade 3, you can activate one of 2 powerful defensive effects. For the first effect, your Vanguard gets plus 10,000 power for the end of the turn until end of turn. So for this first effect, it's a good way to stop your opponent from rushing you too early by attacking you with a large number of attacks during the early phase of the fight. And the second effect, just like the first effect, it's a defensive skill. It can reduce your opponent's attacking unit by 2 criticals, thus making it easier to hold back any heavy damage early in the game from opponents who manage to hit you with high critical attacks early. And the second skill, its skill is used when you call it from hand to rear guard. From hand to rear guard, then if you have no cards in the damage zone, you can place the top card of the deck face up on the damage zone. This way, it's a good counter to use against the opponents who play the damage denial strategy. The damage denial strategy is when your opponents prevent you from using your skills by not making you have any counterblast ready by not attacking you, giving you no cards in the damage zone. With Nastasia's skill, you can then more or less work around the annoyance of the damage denial strategy, giving you at least 1 counterblast to work with. And of that, we just about covered the deck's trigger lineup. For the triggers of this deck, we are playing 8 critical triggers, 4 draw triggers, and 4 heal triggers. And now, after having just explained the deck's build and card effects, next, let's get on to explain the deck's main playstyle. So for the main playstyle of this deck, first you just ride normally from Grade 0, 1, 2, and 3, Dual Axe Archdragon. Then in your main phase, try to secure the rear guards, Lizard Soldier Ralpia, Bellicosity Dragon, and or Vortex Dragon. And then when you secure these rear guards in your field, activate your Dual Axe Archdragon skill to not only retire your opponent's rear guards in the back row, but also to apply a guard restriction ability for the rest of the turn. Then maybe for the remaining rear guard circles, try to secure more rear guards with the ability to retire rear guards like Dragon Knight He-Shot, Turret Cannon Dragon, or any of the other cards in this deck. Use their skills to retire more rear guards, then taking advantage of Bellicosity, Vortex Dragon, and Ralpia's skills to increase their power every time you retire an opponent's rear guards. And then when it's time to go to the battle phase, just attack normally, all the while using the increased power and the guard restriction ability provided by Dual Axe Archdragon to make it that much harder for your opponents to block your attack. And of that's pretty much the deck's main playstyle. First, you just ride to Grade 3, Dual Axe Archdragon, try to secure Ralpia, Bellicosity, and or Vortex Dragon. Then on your other rear guards, try to secure more rear guard retiring units. Then activate your Vanguard Dual Axe Archdragon skill to retire all of your opponent's back row rear guards, thus using these 3 rear guards to power up every time you retire opponent's rear guard. Then also use the additional effect of Dual Axe Archdragon skill to apply a guard restriction effect, thus making it so that your opponent have to guard all of your upcoming attacks with 2 more cards from hand, making it that much harder for them to defend and to make it easier for you to either pressure or finish them off with. And of that, which is about covered the deck's main playstyle. And of that's just about all the time we have for today. First I want to say is thank you to the viewers watching today's video, and to please stay tuned for more videos I plan to upload again in the near future. And I also hope you all show support by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to my videos and channel. And of that I say goodbye and see you